Welcome back. Today, we're looking at a piece exploring how modern anti-Israel sentiment is rooted in very old theological ideas like replacement theology and a deep resentment of Jewish chosen.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. The first thing that really stands out to me is the historical depth. It's impressive.
It really is.
The argument connecting, current political figures back to these ancient theological fights it's just a very strong case. It moves the whole conversation away from simple politics.
Absolutely. And I think what's so effective is how it lays out the difference between, say, soft supersessionism and the much heavier hard supersessionism.
Right, the Augustine and John Chrysostom stuff.
Exactly. And then connecting that to the radical traditionalist Catholic groups, the ones who reject Vatican II, that provides the foundation that this whole argument needs. It's a solid, undeniable framework. So with that in place, let's talk about where we can make it even more powerful.
Okay, so the first big thing for me is the psychological core of the piece. This idea that anti-Semitism is really driven by resentment, by jealousy, a sort of grievance against the whole concept of a chosen people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge insight. It's profound, but I feel like it could be woven into the historical narrative a lot more strongly.
I couldn't agree more. That insight, that identification of resentment and envy, that is the gold in this piece. It's the big idea.
It's the so what.
It's the so what. Exactly. But the weakness right now is really about placement and in causality. The history part, Augustine's witness people in a degraded state, the popes being anti-Zionist, it's all laid out chronologically.
Like a timeline of events?
Yeah, just one thing after another. And then the switch to the psychology, that Cain and Abel analogy, it kind of lands at the end like this big conclusion.
Oh, I see what you mean. It feels like the answer you get after you look at the history.
Exactly. Instead of it being the thing that was driving the history all along, the psychology is the engine, right? We need to hear that engine running through every historical moment, not just get a summary of how it works at the very end.
That's a good point. I was worried that if you bring in something like Cain and Abel too early, it might oversimplify the theology. We don't want to make it sound like Augustine was just like a jealous brother.
That's a fair concern. And the suggestion isn't to just drop the analogy at the start and call it a day. It's about reframing those historical positions as they come up, to show them as explicit, as manifestations of that resentment.
So you're connecting the how, the theology, to the why, the psyche, at every step.
You got it. So when the piece talks about the church fathers insisting the Jews would never return to the land of Israel, you pause right there and connect it. You explicitly say that this denial, this theological rule, is a perfect expression of that envy. It's the desire to keep the chosen people suppressed.
It proves the psychological point in real time.
In real time. And you could even see this idea earlier. Maybe before you even get into Cain and Abel, you could use that analogy of the Kohanim and the other tribes.
Oh, interesting.
Just to set up this idea of different roles, of unique purpose. It frames the conversation so that when someone demands equal footing, you've already shown that this is a misunderstanding, that it comes from a place of resenting someone else's unique God-given role.
That really does strengthen the core thesis. It makes the whole argument feel inevitable, not just observation. Okay, let's move on. The second point, for me, is about the historical timeline itself.
The theological war?
Yeah, from hard supersessionism all the way to Christian Zionism. It's dense. It's packed with crucial information, but it could really use some clearer signposts.
I agree. The density is a testament to the research, but the weakness is about the pacing and, frankly, just helping the listener keep up. You're jumping from Augustine in the 4th century to Darby in the 1800s, then Pius the X, Pius the 12th.
And then straight to Candace Owens.
Right. And while it's all accurate, it can feel a little bit like a whirlwind tour of history. It risks overwhelming people and they might lose the thread, which is the central conflict between two completely opposite ways of thinking.
We need to map the battle lines more clearly.
That's the perfect way to put it. So the suggestion is to basically categorize the history into two opposing camps. You create these two buckets, one for those who endorse the degradation of the Jewish people, and one for those who embrace the eternal covenant.
And you use those as labels throughout?
As signposts. Yeah, it just does the heavy lifting for the listener. So, for example, you could literally create a label like Camp A, the degradation thesis.
I like that. It's clear.
And under that heading, you group Augustine, John Chrysostom, Pius XII's actions, and then the modern traditionalists who hate Israel because, in their view, the church fathers already decreed the Jews would never return. You show it's all one continuous idea.
It creates this unbroken line from ancient Rome to a modern-day podcast.
Exactly. And then you have Camp B, the Eternal Covenant, and that's where you put the counter-revolutionaries. You put John Nelson Darby there, the rise of Christian Zionism, Schofield, Moody, and then, of course, Pope John XXIII and Nostra Aetate.
So it's not just a timeline, it's a tug of war.
It's a tug of war, and it makes it crystal clear which legacy someone like a Tucker Carlson is tapping into. It explains why there's this war for Charlie Kirk's legacy happening in conservative media right now. It turns a history lesson into a live ideological battle.
That's a massive structural improvement. It makes it so much more dynamic. Okay. So this brings us to the third and final point, which is about the end of the piece. It pivots to talk about the Great Reversal documentary trailer, which is powerful stuff, this idea of reversing cause and effect in the Israeli-Arab conflict. But I feel like it needs to be tied in more directly with everything that came before it.
100%. The weakness is that it's presented as sort of the next topic. Like, okay, we talked about theology, now let's talk about geopolitics.
When really they're the same topic.
They are cause and effect. They aren't sequential points. They're a chain reaction. The audience needs to see, without a shadow of a doubt, how the theological need produces the geopolitical lie.
So the theology basically creates the political necessity.
It has to. The suggestion is to explicitly connect that theological motive, the centuries-old need for the Jewish people to be the wandering Jew, to be in exile, to the political method of the Great Reversal. That reversal isn't just a clever PR trick. It's the only political strategy that works if you need to sustain the theological hatred.
Right, because if your theology demands that the Jews be degraded, then a sovereign, successful Jewish state in Israel it's a theological problem, a contradiction.
It's an intolerable contradiction, so you have to erase it politically. The argument gets so much stronger when you draw that direct line. You can literally say, if replacement theology requires the Jewish people to be assigned to the dustbin of history, then their sovereignty in Israel must be delegitimized.
And the Great Reversal is how you do it.
It's the tool for the job. It's how aggression gets reframed as resistance, how defense gets recast as provocation. It's not a separate issue. It's the political consequence of the theological premise.
That's incredibly powerful. It shows the modern political strategy is just serving this ancient religious requirement.
And to really nail it down, you can even bring in the other examples from the text. Use the material on Hamas and political Islam, show how their theology, that Islam must dominate the region, also relies on the exact same reversal tactic to get sympathy from the West.
So you show it's a universal tool for theologically driven movements.
Exactly. It demonstrates that these political lies are almost always downstream from some kind of religious or ideological doctrine. It unifies the entire critique.
This is really strong. I mean, this framework makes the whole argument feel completely locked in.
It's important material. And these changes just make sure the internal logic is totally seamless.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the actionable takeaways. First, weave that psychological core, the Cain-and-Abel resentment, throughout the entire historical narrative from the beginning.
Right. Make it the lens, not the conclusion. Second, use clearer structural camps. Camp A, the degradation thesis, versus Camp B, the eternal covenant. Give the listener a map to the ideological war.
And third, explicitly position the Great Reversal as the necessary geopolitical result of the theological conflict. Show how the political lie is born from the religious need.
You implement those, and this piece goes from being very, very good to being structurally undeniable. We're really excited to see how these changes sharpen an already powerful argument.
We invite you to revise it and send it back to us for another look. Until next time.